All right, thanks for joining us. Today we have Pierre DeBois, one of our speakers at Juneteenth conference. You're actually a returning speaker. Tell me how you felt the value of the conference was.
I enjoyed it. I started my business with part of the mission was to work with Black business owners, and particularly that means also work with the Black community. And a lot of times, to be honest with you, in the tech space, that can be sometimes you have to kind of purposely muscle that in basically to make it work.
Right.
So this was this was one of the main opportunities over the years and it's one that I really enjoyed because the presentation. It was a little bit, there was a very smidge about analytics and data, but the big story was more about talking about how the Black community, the middle class of Black community had emerged basically from time of the Depression, from the Great Migration over to how we had Jet and Black enterprise. And then as we got into more of the digital age. But it was a real pleasure to do that type of presentation because it was a way of kind of, I think for us as a culture, it gives us a chance to sit down and look at where we are. Even though we hear bits and pieces, good and bad, it gives us a chance to look at where we are.
Right. That was one of our primary focuses for the first conference was to, reflect on where we've been, celebrate where we are now, but also be ready for the road ahead, getting ready and, as we move into this new age of AI and uncertainty in the job market. But I think our current theme is building our own table. What do you think about that?
I think it's a good title because that is where we are right now. We have an opportunity. We've really had this opportunity for a while, but it's just been the pieces have been falling into place as technology has evolved. There's a lot of ways now, for example, if you're offering a service through even just through social media and email, there's a lot of ways of connecting with the customers and building the audience in a way that wasn't there before. We've had to kind of look for each other, whether it's through Green Book or just from a speakeasy type of way. Right. I think AI has changed a lot of things in terms of more opportunity, but I also think there's also challenges in terms of how we communicate and what we look for. One of the things we'll talk about in my presentation is, and I really love doing this because we're at a point now where with AI, there's a lot of these options and we have to be a little bit more discerning about what options are really working for us from an economic standpoint. Right. And I think that the other piece of it that I'm excited about is that where I stopped with the first presentation was probably, if I remember correctly, roughly a year before, maybe even I think almost not quite 2 years before ChatGPT kicked in. And right. So since then, we've had a parade of different tools. I'm hoping with this presentation to help people understand how they can pick their best services that will help build their business. And a lot of things are not just being exclusively technology oriented. It's just how do we integrate those things within the businesses and services that we want to provide.
Right. We had such a great conversation so far. I forgot to even introduce you or allow you to introduce yourself.
Okay. Well, that's a mark of a great conversation. So there we go.
Tell the audience about yourself and
a little bit. I'm a Gary, Indiana native, so I was born in Gary, Indiana. But don't ask me to moonwalk or spin around like Michael Jackson. Unfortunately, I don't get royalties from that. Right. But I've been around in different parts of the country. I worked as an engineer at Ford Motor Company way back in the 90s. And that was my dream job. That was actually what I wanted to be, was an automotive engineer. But I also wanted to start my own business. And I wasn't sure if I could do that within the confines of being within Ford. So I went off, I did my MBA, eventually got an MBA from Georgia Tech. Okay. Worked with a government contractor, which I proudly say was started by my cousin, Anita Williams. And that also gave me a little bit of inspiration for Google Analytics. We actually used Google Analytics there. And I kind of thought there might be a business model for it, but it really was very nascent. So it was very hard to flesh that out. moved to a job in New York after my cousin had told me, he said, "Hey, I'm getting ready to sell the business, move on." To make a long story short, the New York job, I love New York. It's still one of my favorite cities, but the job itself wasn't that great. And in 6 months, they had let me go. They even let go of the lady who brought me on board. So, but at that time, I had my website kind of ready to go. I had been thinking and mulling it over. And I just said, you know what, if I'm, like the song says, if I can make it here, I can make it anywhere. And so I started my business. And I've been in business now for about 17 years. I'm also a contributor for CMS Wire. So I do write marketing and analytics articles for them. And in my business, I help people to understand their data, whether it's through Google Analytics for digital marketing. These days, I do a lot with R and Python. So I do a lot of data modeling, and I'm also an adjunct because of that. So with this conference, I'm also going to talk a little bit more about, as a flywheel, what people should be looking, what things they got to look for to kind of develop their skills and build their opportunities.
Right. Oh, that is amazing. A man of many talents. I know you. I know you as an entrepreneur with Zimana Analytics, but like I think a lot of us have a entrepreneurial mindset, but I think our training, our upbringing, kind of steers us away from that. What gave you the confidence to make that leap from the traditional 9 to 5 to running your own company?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'll be honest with you, it wasn't straightforward. Most times I try to tell people you need to be a little bit of a student of, it may sound like be a student of life, so to speak, but it really kind of is. Part of me knew that I wanted to do something. I just kind of knew I couldn't do it within 4 at that time. That's the key phrase I always tell people. There may be some things are about timing.
Right.
And for my parents weren't entrepreneurial, but I had an uncle who was he was a dean at Texas Southern. I mentioned about my cousin Anita. I learned a lot. I worked for her for about almost 3 years. I learned a lot working not just with her, but also the team at Lesco at that time. So I gained a lot from that. There were just stepping stones that you have to kind of put pieces together, basically. And that falls for technology quite a bit. There's a lot of people who have learned spreadsheets, from Excel from long ago. But before there was Excel, you had I think Lotus 1-2-3 had spreadsheets from that, basically. So there's something there's some tool that you usually follow, and usually those tools open those opportunities for you, and you start learning bits and pieces. I'll be honest, I was not a programmer when I started. My background is mechanical engineering and an MBA from Georgia Tech. Right. And I said this to one person real quickly. I'll say this real quickly. And it was in Clubhouse of all places. So the guy was like, "Well, you're an engineer. That should be." I was like, "No, it's not. It's not." He's like, "You're an engineer. You have to, you should have the discipline to do X, Y, and Z, and what have you." I said, "Not necessarily. Your engineering is all these jobs that we have are applied sciences at some level. And you have to pay attention to what you're applying, and then also be a good, like I said, be a good student of what things are emerging. And I think those are the things that will help you. They won't make you completely confident, but you'll ask sharper questions faster, which right now, that's probably the best weapon to stay alive if you're an entrepreneur, to be honest with you. It's just, and I think the confidence will come from those successes from that more so than a motivational speech or even I use movies as motivations, basically. So even a scene from a movie can be a little motivational, but it's you have to put the work in and get the other pieces to come together.
Right. That makes sense. That makes perfect sense. So you're from Northwest Indiana. I'm from Chicago. What do you feel about the Bears coming to
Yeah. I was hoping it would come to Gary more than Hammond. First of all, I gotta
Right.
be honest. That didn't happen. And I'm going to be really. There's supposedly there's an environmental group that I guess is doing a lawsuit right now about it. It would be ironic if the Bears lost the opportunity from that. And here's why I say that. Years ago for Gary, there was a plan to put the Bears in Gary.
Oh, wow.
And it fell apart because the place that they were looking at, there was a wetland. And the environmental study, the time that it would have taken to do that study was out of sync with the Bears' plans to come out of Soldier Field. So that led to in fact, to be honest, that led to them staying in Soldier Field and how it looks today. It would be ironic if they don't get this for Hammond, basically. So I'm not, I just got mixed feelings because I feel like it's nothing against Hammond. I just feel like for Chicago, there's nothing that beats the Bears being on the lakefront. If you look at Monday Night Football and they show every team, Philadelphia Eagles, Washington, I was going to say Redskins, Washington Commanders, every team that is shown, they always show the city backdrop. And I feel like there's that gets missing, like this. And what looks better when you have the stadium with the city somewhere in there. Chicago has the best location for that. And I'm not sure if they do need a new stadium. I just don't think I think moving over to Indiana, I'm not sure it's going to be the bonanza as much as they think it would be. No. There's just a part of me that's really kind of cautious about that, to be honest. So that's my two cents on it.
Yeah. So now we could be like New York. All our teams are over across the border. So like the Giants and Jets play in New Jersey.
Yeah.
New York.
Okay, we're the big leagues now. Now we can do that. Yeah. And I think the other thing too is sometimes moving teams. I think some teams have a cachet. I think most teams are betting that their fans will come wherever they are. Look at the Raiders. I didn't know Las Vegas had was only like I don't think it's like even a couple hours flight between Las Vegas and Oakland. So they're always anticipating Raider Nation. They could have put that in the middle of North Dakota and it still would be Raider Nation coming, basically. So I think sometimes the NFL plays their hand too. There's some teams that don't quite have that. The Bears really are. I mean, there's Bears fanatics, but part of it is the Chicago thing as well too. So
yeah, I think the iron is hot enough for them to strike because they finally won for the first time in like 7 years. So
that hope it comes. That game against the Rams, I love that. I love how Williams had that crazy like Hail Mary
from like the 45.
I love that he did that, and then when they get to the overtime, it's like okay, then we end up with a turnover. So I always tell people that's also a life thing as well too. So that's statistics in play. It's basically that's Hail Mary you're throwing to hopefully win the game, but it's when you throw that makes a big difference. So.
Exactly. Okay, so you gave a hint to us about your talk. What can the audience expect from it?
This is going to be a little bit more. It's going to feel like a part two of my previous talk because I think there was a lot of things there that I think that are still relevant. Idea of how technology advanced, how that opened up the Great Migration. What we're going to talk about is a little bit more on the AI side, and not very, very technical, but just more of now that this is here, what should we be doing to stay connected? I think that's one thing we'll have a challenge. We have a generation of people where we're still 14% of the population, a little bit of growth compared to like 12 and maybe even 10% from days of old. But what's happening is that we have people in parts of the country that are not necessarily those traditional Black communities. And I think that dynamic changes how we look for services. You can look at areas like if you come to Chicago from Chicago, there's we've always had some people in the suburbs, but now we have people really in the south suburbs, for example.
Right.
Gary is the same thing. It used to be Gary. If you were Black, more than likely you're in Gary. Maybe Hammond, but more than likely you're in Gary. Today, Maryville, which was kind of the subject of quote unquote white flight and everything else, is 45% Black.
Right.
So there's all these places that we are discovering that's going to change how we find each other. We're going to do it online. I want to talk about that. And I also want to talk a little bit about, we need to be a little bit discerning about what is the business really how it's committed to the community. That part, I think, is a part that I think will be a challenge, because AI can also, for lack of a better term, someone can come up with an AI avatar and mimic us. I think there was something in Black Enterprise, I gotta go back and look at it, but there was something where there were Black influencers that were mimicked with an AI, for example. So,
Right.
so those sort of things, I think, will change how we interact and how we discern and how we engage as a community. I think it really will. So.
Okay, so I like that. Owning our own history, part two. I'll put the link to your prior talk. We're on our YouTube channel in the comments. And also, is there anything else you'd like to share with us?
Commercially, right now we're if you need to find me, I'm on LinkedIn, happy to connect with you and talk. I'm in the process of updating the website as we speak. I will have that ready by the time that we have our talk as well. I know that's always, feels like a feels like an annual conversation. We need to update the website. And then also, I also do a lot of writing on Medium as well. So if people are trying to learn things about R and Python, I am doing some articles there, and I will have courses set up I'm trying to aim for this by the end of summer, so that way it's running and going. So that part, I'm also working on material for that as well. So
Awesome. Awesome. Well, it's great to be talking with you today, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in Chicago next Friday.
I'm very excited. So thank you for having me.